All right. Possession versus responsibility. Now, I really hope I I'm going to be doing something very out of the norm here. I know my recent videos, I've written an essay, kind of thought things more, thought things out more. But in this scenario, I haven't written anything about this topic per se, but I have been contemplating on this topic for a long time. Well, at least for the past couple weeks, I think two weeks now, I would say, at least 2 weeks. And I've had some dialogues with a couple of people about it, and it's gonna sound like a strange claim, or it's a claim that's gonna sound like it's out there for sure. But I think the distinction becomes more important as I can kind of make a case to prove that it is important, and maybe prove that it's sort of difficult to possibly really make the distinction in terms of proving and disproving it and so on. But so what I'm going to put out there is, so typically the philosophical history is that we possess being, right? That I am this being. However, I've begun to question it in terms of responsibility. Now, why is responsibility coming into the picture? Well, I think there could possibly be a leap in terms of our interpretation of things. Can it be the case that I am a being, but I don't necessarily possess this being? Can it be that case? And can it be the case that I'm instead responsible for this being, even though I am this being, right? And I guess just to kind of throw in a philosophical kind of thought experiment, right? Something that's kind of humorous, actually. It's humorous, but nonetheless, I think it makes my point. I think it will make my point. So imagine a sink faucet, right? And we grant this sink faucet consciousness, right? And we won't get into the big debate about what kind of consciousness do I mean. Let's just kind of go with the conventional consciousness, able to accumulate experience, awareness, so on. Let's use all those kind of definitions. That's fine. No need to get quite stuck on the definitions yet. So we'll say this sink faucet has consciousness, right? Now, here's the interesting thing. If I give this sink faucet consciousness, and then I turn it on, right? And water starts coming out of its mouth. Because this sink faucet has consciousness, it will claim that there's stuff spilling out of it, right? That there is water, that it's his water coming out of him, right? And he'll probably freak out because it's something that's coming out of him, right? And that this is his stuff that is coming out of him. And so what I'm trying to get at here is that, can it be the case, because we know the water coming out from the faucet is actually not the faucet's water, right? We know that the faucet doesn't actually possess the water, but is responsible for functioning as a faucet, so water can come through. So the function of the faucet is to be a receptacle for the water, right? Sort of receptacle, a passageway, right? And so I would say if you gave a faucet consciousness, it could easily mistake the water as being its own. And so just to kind of connect this back to human beings and beings, what I'm proposing is, can it be the case that we don't actually possess being, but instead we're responsible for being? Right? And and some could say, well, why does this matter? Well, I think it matters because, one, there's a problem with identity, right? Identity, personality, right? Just the very fact that identity, personality, that's so malleable, right? And yet it's the most intimate and seemingly permanent thing that we know, right? Because we label it as our I, right? As our I, as I am, and so on. And so these are the kind of modes of beings that we participate in. Now, what I'm trying to account for is, why is it so malleable? Why is it that it can be malleable? Right? When we think about, actors, how they can just sort of jump into a personality, right? And it becomes a part of them, or they become a part of it. I don't really know. But I also think, to bring up another example, is to bring up the Sanford. I think it was the Sanford experiment, right? With the prison guards and the criminals, where all of a sudden the people that were supposed to be pretending to be guards actually consumed the personality of guards and really believed that they were guards within a fascinating amount of short time, actually, right? And it was actually scary a little bit when you pay attention to that case, how fast they consumed that personality, right? And it became a part of them. And they really believed that it was them. So you kind of see what I'm saying? Like, the very fact that, and if you guys ever have a chance, you guys can look up Fernando Pessoa, who also wrote under many personalities. I can't say that he had a disorder or anything, but he wrote under many personalities, and he believed that these personalities existed within him. So the real question comes to this: are we a receptacle, or do we actually possess? And what I'm trying to account for is all these kind of oddities, right? Acting, that Sanford experiment, the way the personality can sort of be so malleable, right? This I, we don't even know what this I is, but yet it's so elusive, right? It's the elusive I. And I was really thinking about this. Could it be the case that it's elusive because, well, it's not ours, right? We are a receptacle, actually. That's why it's elusive. It's because we are a receptacle. We don't actually possess it, right? And maybe some of the neurosis occurs because we actually do believe that we possess it, right? But again, feel free to give anything that would counter what I'm saying. I mean, right now I'm being very vulnerable here. I'm just kind of thinking on my feet and sort of kind of summarizing some things that I've come across in my mind and I've been thinking about quite a lot. And well, so let's just continue going. So why would this be significant? Well, like I said before, it could account for these oddities, right? These anomalies, you could say. And on top of that, I think it would make sense of some of the existential burden that we feel that we can't explain, right? I feel like responsibility, when someone says you're responsible for something, right? Like, I'm giving you this in your care, and you have to be responsible for it. There's a lot of burden with that, right? Almost there's anxiety inherent in that, but there's also value, right? There's inherent value in you because they're giving you the responsibility, and there's inherent value in whatever that they are giving you for to put in your possession of care, right? Your responsibility of care. And so, making this distinction, I'm just saying that it possibly makes sense of some of the existential anxiety that we have about who we are, what I am, what's the meaning of life. Because it feels like a burden, and it feels like something that I have to address, something that I have to take care of, and something that I am responsible for knowing, right? Something that I am responsible for pursuing. And I just fail to see the same line of logic, the same line of actions and so on if I just possess it, because if I just possess it, I mean, we all seen how people take care of their own things. It varies widely, right? It varies widely. I mean, some people, yes, they take very good care of their things. And some people, just because it is their thing, they'll just, because they do own it, they will just toss it aside, right? Because it's theirs. They can do whatever they want with it, right? They can choose to be careless with it if they want to, because it's theirs. But see, and if we go into the line of thought that we possess, well, we're very prone to have thoughts of meaninglessness. It's quite possible to possess something and give it lots of value, but then at the same time, it's also quite possible to possess something and look at it as little value, right? Because you possess it. Again, it's just a matter of because you possess it. It doesn't necessarily mean that you will care for it just because you possess it. You already own it. So what? Right? So what? But responsibility, that's heavy, man. That's heavy, right? When someone says, like, even if it's something you didn't even ask to be responsible for, right? If someone says, here you go, you're responsible for this now, right? For the care and so on, I would say most reasonable human beings would already feel the burden of having to take care of whatever that was and being responsible for it. So, and I'm not sure if I'm making the best case here, but I'm hoping that I'm at least causing some reflection on could it be the case that we don't possess being, but that I'm responsible for my being, even though I am being, right? I am this being. I am a being, right? Not with the big B, but the little b. And I was thinking of the same thing about like a mirror, for example, right? When I look in the mirror, the image, I don't own the image. I don't actually own the image. the image is me, but at the same time, it's not me. You know what I mean? Because it's an image, right? And so, the mirror, it doesn't possess any image, but it's responsible for displaying an image, right? And the same thing with myself is that I don't own the image, but I am as well responsible for the way I represent the image, right? The way I represent the image. I am responsible for that. Even though I don't own the image, I am responsible for representing it a certain way, maybe to my liking, maybe not to my liking, maybe to society's liking, like shaving, putting on some clothes, and so on. But I don't possess that image. It's not mine. Right? It's not mine. But I have a responsibility for representing it. Which I feel I hope that makes sense. So I wanted to talk about will, right? Hopefully I can talk about this before the time goes a little bit too long. But so the will, it's often debated, do we have a will? Do we not have a will? Some people don't rather. Some people go another route. They say there's certain gradations of will, a weak will, a strong will, and the will. All these kind of things. But I don't think anybody quite makes a distinction between, it's not that we possess a will, but that we're responsible for a will. Now, what does that mean? Right? Because at least, right? At least we can still have accountability in the law, right? Because I'm responsible for my will. Maybe I don't possess my will, which would make sense because there's limitations to the will. But I am responsible for what I do have, right? I am responsible for what was given. And so I'm still held accountable for all the things that I do with that will. But I don't possess it because, at least the way I'm describing possession, it's full possession, 100%, no limitations. But because there is limitations, my assumption is that possibly we're just being responsible, right? We just sort of been given the task of care, which I think is significant, really. But I'm not entirely sure if it's convincing enough. But hopefully it's at least offers some consideration. Now, good questions would emerge like, well, then who gave us that responsibility? Who or what? Well, I don't know those answers. Not really. And, it's not some ploy to allude to something divine. I really don't know. But I do hope that it causes at least some contemplation. I have no idea, but I think entertaining it is worthy of such things, and just the fact that I would have responsibility. I mean, again, it causes so much significance in one's life. It's really hard to make anything meaningless. Even if you couldn't explain it, I mean, you can just feel the significance. And, to me, that just kind of makes sense of the existential anxiety, because it's like, you can't quite explain it, why you don't understand, but why you do want to understand. but you just know that there is this weight, and I think that weight is responsibility, you know. So anyways, that's enough for my talk. I hopefully will write the paper this weekend, so but of course, let me hear your thoughts and concerns and critiques. I'm just thinking on my feet here, so be gentle. All right, take care.